Hello, my friends. I'm going to share with you an exciting way to make discoveries in astrology. You can make discoveries. You can show that certain ideas in astrology actually work. I know this is very controversial. Astrology is one of the most controversial topics that there are. But there are ways to remove some of this controversy by actually showing that things work. And the method I'm going to share with you today is mathematical modeling. It's a highly effective procedure for discovering how astrology works. It's not the only procedure. It's not necessarily the greatest and the best. The best procedure depends on the circumstances, what kind of data you have, what's available to you. But this is really a fantastic way to make discoveries. It's also extremely neglected and overlooked and hardly ever even described clearly. So I'm going to describe this to you. Now, mathematics is a language that describes many things in the physical world. For example, planetary motions. There are formulas that determine or explain where the planets are. There's gravity, Newton's law of gravity. What these scientists did is they took things going on in the world, they applied a formula to it, and that formula, we say in science, predicts where things will be. This is essential to all areas of engineering and applied science. And that same procedure, the same ways that the laws of gravity and laws of planetary motion were discovered, can be used in astrology. Same approach to the problem. And to give you an idea of some background to this, there's a very famous article called The Unreasonable Effectiveness of Mathematics in the Natural Sciences, written by Eugene Wigner back in 1960. This has become a classic paper because what physicist Eugene Wigner shares in this paper is, wow, isn't it weird, isn't it wild, isn't it crazy that reality, a lot of things in reality can be described by a formula. Just the fact that that's true, that there's a formula for gravity and you can calculate these things. And it's just amazing how often things can be reduced to formulas. This is the unreasonable effectiveness. Unreasonable in the sense that intuitively many of us would not expect formulas to work so well. And I'm going to read the last sentences of this paper because they're almost prophetic. Because the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics is now being used in astrology research. And that's what I want to share with you, is how we can mathematically model things. Very different from the statistical research and the kinds of research methods most people are familiar with. So let me read this last few sentences of this famous paper by Eugene Wigner. The miracle of the appropriateness of the language of mathematics for the formulation of the laws of physics is a wonderful gift which we neither understand nor deserve. A lot of times, something like how fast something is falling in the air, or you throw a ball and how high it goes and how far it goes, all those calculations that engineers and physicists can do using this language of mathematics, it's like a gift. We don't really know why these formulas work. They just work. In fact, when Newton discovered the laws of gravity, he said, I have no explanation for this. It's like an action at a distance. It doesn't seem causal. It's hard to understand. These formulas, they work. You find a formula, it works. Sometimes people think that science is cause and effect. A lot of times it's not. It's just finding a formula, guessing, using your intuition, trying a formula, and then seeing if it actually fits with observations. That's what's going on. So Wigner goes on, he says, we should be grateful for it. And now I put this in bold because this is exactly what's happening in astrology, and hope that it will remain valid in future research and that it will extend for better or worse, to our pleasure, even though perhaps also to our bafflement, to wide branches of learning. Wow, it's amazing. Hope that it will remain valid in future research and that it will extend to wide branches of learning. This is exactly what I am doing and some other people are doing in a new branch of learning, of astrology. We're applying these mathematical formulas the same way it's done in physics. And I'm going to show you how we're doing it and what the procedure is. Because when you do this, there are some details about how to do it that if you don't do it properly, you don't make the discoveries. So I'm going to go through this, how to properly do this mathematical modeling to make discoveries. Now, so what I'm saying is that if we go deeper into the mathematical foundations of astrology and start developing these mathematical formulas, as you will see, you may say, oh, we already have formulas. We measure distances between planets. But this is a much more comprehensive, detailed, and consistent way of viewing astrology in a language of geometry and mathematics. So if we go deeper to discover, to find mathematical foundations of astrology, just like Kepler searching for some formula that would describe how planets are moving, and after a tremendous amount of work, he discovered the 3 laws of planetary motion, which we still use today. They work. So if we did the same thing in astrology, we might reveal tremendously exciting new insights, just as has happened in physics. Perhaps the tendency of many astrologers to hold on to the ancient ways of astrology is hampering our ability to discover how astrology works. Maybe we need to find this language of mathematics that's behind things. In fact, I believe that this is exactly what is happening, and I'm going to share with you how we use this mathematical modeling to make discoveries. So what I'm saying is astrology is often viewed as a language. So I have here in this little box, people say Mars, so Mars is a noun, is aspected verb to Jupiter, another noun, and Mars is in the 3rd house, and the house tells us where. So the whole statements of astrology are broken down into nouns, verbs, where, when, this kind of thing. It's a language. It's a language, it's a language, it's a language. This is what many people say. It's a symbolic language. Well, instead of that, what if we replace that with astrology as a study of the fractal vibrational nature of the universe? You can still make these statements and you can still think of them as a language, but underneath that language is what I'm saying. Underneath, where does this language come from? It's coming from the fractal vibrational nature of the universe. So in the form of astrology that I do, and consequently in a lot of the research I do, I'm looking at astrology as the study of the fractal vibrational nature of the universe. By fractal, we mean things are repeating at different levels. They're resonating and causing these relationships between what's going on at different levels, from the patterns in the sky to the patterns in our lives, all founded on vibration. So, for example, you might say, well, gee, Santino, not everything in astrology is a vibration. We have these little compartments, the 12 signs. They're not vibrations. They're like rooms in a house. They're 12 discrete sections. Well, we have found that there are vibrational patterns that explain why the 12 signs exist. We call them structures in space, from number sequences embedded in spin and in the ecliptic plane, which is a form of dimension reduction. Well, I don't want to throw a lot of fancy words at you. Let me just say this, that we have discovered a very clear way of understanding how the 12 zodiac signs were created, out of vibration. That these vibrations can form clear, simple structures. And it's very clear, it's very straightforward. This is not a lot of woo-woo, esoteric, intuitive, whatever. You just take Fibonacci's numbers, you put them into what we call a modulus function. It creates what are well known as Paisano periods. This is established mathematics. And when you put those Paisano periods around a circle, you end up with the 12 signs of the zodiac, including the elements, fire, earth, air, water. All kinds of details of the zodiac signs correspond exactly to this mathematical formula. This is exactly the kind of thing that Kepler and Newton did. They said, oh, look at, I'm going to drop an apple, watch it fall. It happens to fit perfectly with a formula. And you can apply that formula to determine where the apple will be after so many seconds of flight, etc. Seconds of falling down. So it's the same thing. We have found these formulas that fit perfectly with things like zodiac signs. So I have 2 videos, how Fibonacci numbers create the zodiac. You can watch that video, and I'll put the link to it in the description below. There's another one on how the nakshatras, these fundamental sections of the sky used in Vedic astrology, are also created out of these Paisano periods. It's amazing. So what I'm saying is we have developed an understanding of astrology in terms of it being created out of frequencies and vibrations, and using ideas in physics and expanding upon those ideas. And we can see all of these ideas in astrology emanating, being developed, being created out of vibration. The original work on how Fibonacci numbers create the zodiac was done in, I think it was 2016, so it was 9 years ago. And since then, understanding in tremendous detail. I've made about 10 or 20, probably close to 20 videos on how vibration creates things like zodiac signs and the houses. So what we've done is we're developing this way of understanding astrology in terms of mathematics. And it's showing that this, let's go back to that original slide, that the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics applying to wide branches of learning, exactly what Eugene Wigner said back in 1960, is exactly what we are experiencing. Now, astrology is focused on the number 12, 12 signs, 12 houses. So many things based on 12. You also have 27 nakshatras in Vedic astrology, other ideas. Not everything is 12, but 12 dominating. Well, I'll call it addiction to 12, is cutting off access. It's cutting off our awareness of the rich vibrational nature of astrology. In analyzing the Paisano periods, we actually see 12 is prominent. It is fundamental. It's important. But is it overwhelmingly the dominant thing and everything's based on 12? No. And there are many areas of astrology in which 12 does not dominate, and some areas in terms of structures and space where it's fundamental. So we're able to understand these things through a clear mathematical understanding. It's very detailed. I've made a total of about 800 videos, at least 100 of them describe this cosmic resonance and frequency that's foundational, at the basis of astrology. And once you use this idea as a basis, you can make discoveries. You can make discoveries that are validated using modern research methods. You get high statistical significance doing strict hypothesis tests. Things that people say are not possible are actually already happening by using the unreasonable, as Wigner puts it, the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. And so there are a lot of rules that have been discovered over the decades using this approach to astrology. A simple one is this. Take a circle divided into 5 sections. So you see this 5-sided pentagram here. Okay, very simple. We just divide the sky into 5. Then take each of those 5 sides, divide it in half. So we have the 10 red ones going around. This is so simple. All we're saying is that when, for example, planets are distributed in fifths of a circle, it's a frequency, it's a vibration. And whether the planets are 1/5 or 2/5 of a circle apart doesn't matter that much. It's like a note. It's like the note A or the note C or the color green or the color yellow. The color green is a frequency. A note is a frequency. They're frequencies with qualities. When you double a note, in other words, go up an octave, a lot of the qualities of that note are retained. Same thing here. We use these principles, and we identified what's in the birth charts of people with bipolar disorder. We did a strict hypothesis test, gathered new data. These very simple fundamental principles working beautifully. It requires letting go of your attachment to all of the ideas that were historically passed down, and let this mathematical modeling lead you where it wants to lead you. Same exact things that are done in the sciences, and you end up with this mind-blowing ability to understand things and see things that you couldn't see before. So again, what are we doing with this mathematical modeling? It's so simple. It's unbelievable. First of all, you do what astrologers often do. Look at a bunch of charts. See what's in them. Like maybe you're looking at charts of people who are great athletes. Maybe they're great basketball players. Or you're looking at charts of whatever you're interested in. And we see what's in common. So you do the same thing you've always done. You just get a group of charts. There's some rules about how to get those charts so it's not a biased sample, etc. But the basic idea is get a small number of charts, because that's reasonable, maybe 3, maybe 6, maybe 10, and see if there's consistent things happening. Now, since I'm using mathematical modeling, I'm going to see if there are consistent vibrational patterns among these people. That would make sense according to our previous research. If you do like normal modern Western astrology, you might want to look at sun, moon, and rising sign, or the aspects with the smallest orbs. And then honestly, look, count up how many of those 10 charts have what you expected. If your theory is that Mars aspected to Uranus is good for athletics, count them up. Well, what happens when you do this is it almost never works. And then people say, well, it works, but it doesn't work when you do it scientifically. Well, actually what's happening is when you do it carefully, you find out that your ideas are not as good as you thought they were. That's what's actually happening. And if they work, that's beautiful. So look at a bunch of charts, see what's in common. And just like these two people here, you're exploring, you're looking, you're probing to see, can you find something consistent in the charts? Now, what I do in a lot of my research is not every chart is going to fit. Maybe 7 out of the 10 athletes have the Mars-Uranus or the fire signs or whatever you expect. Actually, I've studied athletes and that didn't happen. What I found were these vibrational patterns that make sense. But it doesn't make sense for all 10 of them. It might work for 7 or 6 or 8. Well, what we do, this is exactly what Kepler did in developing the laws of planetary motion. We look at what's wrong more than what's right. We're saying, why do these 2 people out of the 10, why are they great athletes and they do not have it? We don't just say, oh, it's statistics, there's exceptions. We probe into it. We keep looking. We keep searching. The same way Kepler kept searching. He had an orbit that was round. He tried to make it elliptical. He played with different formulas. He joked about, I think it was a joke, kind of clever way of putting it, his war with Mars. He had these accurate planetary positions of Mars that astronomer Tycho Brahe had written down, and he kept trying different formulas over and over and over again to see if the formula would match where the planet is. That's exactly what we are doing. We're saying there must be a formula. This is not just a mythic language. This is not just stories and narratives. there's something going on that can be modeled mathematically. We haven't found the formula clearly enough. So you have to admit where your formula is not working and then probe deeper and deeper and deeper. And you can do this without mathematical modeling. You can say, oh, maybe it's a fixed star, maybe it's an asteroid, maybe it's a degree meaning, whatever, but develop a model and then apply it to all, say, 10, a small group of people. This is the procedure, not so different from what astrologers do, but what happens when astrologers do this, they usually give up and they just say, well, I don't know. It works when I do charts, I won't worry about it. Well, here we do worry about it. And we try to find, and then we eventually will find. I'm going to show you some examples of how this works in reality. So it's a matter of persistence, and it's a matter of an intuition that there is a formula there. And especially if you're looking for a formula, a mathematical model, wow, sometimes it takes us a long time, but we find it. We collect new data, and it works. Just like how these discoveries in physics are made. So I'm going to give two examples of using this research method in physics. I'll go through this real quickly, and one in astrology. And so then you'll understand what this procedure is and how you can make breakthrough discoveries to open doors to how astrology actually works and to show that it does work. It's not just divination. There are actually formulas that work. So one I talked about is the discovery of the 3 laws of planetary motion. Just to review, what are these 3 laws of planetary motion so that you can really appreciate that these are formulas. Planets move in elliptical orbits with the sun at one focus. Okay, that's not a formula, that's a geometric statement, clear statement of the geometry. Number 2, if you connect a line from the sun to let me just read it. A line connecting the sun to a planet sweeps out equal arcs in equal time intervals. So that's a formula of how the motion works. And then the square of a planet's orbital period is proportional to the cube of the semi-major axis of its orbit. We don't have to worry about the technical details. But wow, what a crazy formula. You're going to take one thing, square it. You can take another thing, cube it, means multiply by itself 3 times, and they remain proportional. It's like, wow, how the heck did he find this? Well, it wasn't easy, but he kept playing and playing and playing, using intuition and observations of other things that work, and finally found it. You might not even think there is like some simple formulas that would describe the motion of planets. There are, he found them. So what did Kepler do? He guessed that there is a mathematical formula that describes the motions of planets. He kept trying different variations of formula, and he had these very accurate positions of Mars that Tycho Brahe had written down, and he wanted to get it very, very, very close. And he didn't get it like perfect, like to a second of arc, or whatever accuracy he had. I think it was a few minutes of arc, but extremely close. So there's some subjectivity involved in this, like what's close enough. But Kepler felt it had to be like within minutes, like really, really close. And after tremendous effort, he found it. That's the procedure. It's not just A, B, C. It's also how persistent are you? How flexible and creative are you to adapt, to change, to try different things, and how exacting can you be? So this is the process. It's not easy, but when you succeed, wow, major breakthrough. So this is a method, this direct mathematical modeling used by Kepler, that same style of research that we're using in astrology, with huge success. The other example is Newton's law of gravity. His law states that every particle attracts every other particle in the universe with a force directly proportional to the product of the masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. And this takes everything from an apple falling from a tree to the fact that we're standing on this planet. Here's 3 people standing on the planet, to the motion of the moon around the Earth or any other planet around the sun. all of these are based on one relatively simple formula. So when you find this formula, it explains what seem to be a number of diverse, unrelated things are actually operating according to this formula. Same exact thing we're finding in our astrology. So like Kepler, Newton did the same kind of steps as Kepler did. He guessed that there is a mathematical formula, and so three things: you make an observation. Oh, let's throw a ball and see how high it goes and how far it falls, or let's measure how fast something's falling to the ground. You try to fit a mathematical formula to what you're observing, to that behavior, and then you keep making more observations and refining your formula. And if you're lucky and you're persistent enough and you're clever enough and ingenious enough, you find a formula that fits. Maybe the formula isn't perfect, but that fits better than you could predict otherwise. So here's the thing I want to emphasize. For some of these mathematical modeling procedures, there's no statistical analysis. It's not needed and it's not used. So I just want to emphasize that. Now, in the astrology research, we do have a final step where we do a statistical analysis, but we build our understanding, we make our discoveries very often by this procedure, the same procedure that Kepler and Newton used, the same overall general concept. Look for the formula and see it fit nearly every case. Have it fit. And when you have a case that does not work, like suppose you drop a leaf and it falls very slowly. Well, then you say, oh, there's something else going on. There's air and it's giving resistance. So we have to take account of that. So you expand your understanding based on all of the things that are there. But that resistance of the air is also a mathematical formula. Okay, so let's look at the example of the astrology research. So two examples that are not astrology. Here's an example of astrological research using this procedure call it direct mathematical modeling. We're just going to look at something and try to fit a model to it. So you can take anything. You can take a mental illness, a physical illness, a talent, like athletic talent, anything you want. Well, a question was brought up in one of my membership meetings of what do I think is in the charts of cult leaders? Interesting question. I don't know. At first, I wasn't sure. I said, well, gee, I don't know what would be in the charts of cult leaders. And then I thought about it some more, and I thought, well, maybe 43 vibration, because now I remember seeing that in people who are, you might say cult leaders, but and theoretically it makes sense. So I make a guess. You might make a guess just based on your understanding, your anecdotal evidence, that's fine, your experience or traditional beliefs about things. You might do some exploratory research. You might look at some charts and graph things out. You explore, you investigate. You can use machine learning and data mining methods, all data visualization, all kinds of things to try to discover what might be going on. So we don't assume that some idea is correct. We might have an idea already. We check it out. What I'm doing, based on this idea of the universe being working by vibration and resonance, is I'm looking for consistent planetary patterns with few arbitrary items. If you make a formula, you're going to say that people who are cult leaders might have Sun in Gemini, Moon out of bounds, the ruler of the 6th house and the 10th house. It's just like a bunch of little arbitrary things. That's not likely to hold up in the future. You're observing that in the charts you're looking at, but it's not going to hold up. If you have something that's consistent based on some paradigm or model, and and it's relatively consistent, may not be perfectly consistent, it's got a much better chance that it will be validated with new data, because what we're doing here is we're building the model. Kepler spent huge amount of time and effort building the model, in other words, trying to make the discovery of the formula. Same thing with all of these discoveries. And you're going to spend most of your time trying to discover what the formula is, instead of jumping in right away and saying, oh, I'll test this because this is what I think. We're not going to test yet. We're just going to build the model little by little. We're not going to do a comprehensive final statistical analysis and have a control group and all that stuff. We're going to spend a lot of time building the model. And so if the model has got consistent ideas in it, it has more hope of succeeding. So, for example, my guess for cult leaders is strong planetary configurations in 43 vibe. And exactly what kind of strong configurations, I'm not sure, but 3 or more planets connected together. In our most recent research, it's 4 planets, especially in an aspect, more than midpoint structures, and it could be high overtones. So I'm looking at a simple idea. It's 43 vibe with the rules that we confirmed before. So third step is you keep doing it, just like Kepler talked about his war with Mars. His war with Mars was he had accurate positions of Mars, so he was using Mars to try to fit a formula to where Mars is, simply because he had good data for Mars, and Mars's orbit, it varies, it speeds up, it goes retrograde, all that stuff. So he had accurate positions for Mars, and he tried to fit it, and over and over and over again. This is what we do. So the procedure for this mathematical modeling, you simply take a small number of charts and keep working on every one that's not working well until you can find a reason, and hopefully you can develop a simple, elegant formula. That's how the laws of planetary motion were discovered. That's how the law of gravity was discovered. That's how many breakthroughs in science are discovered. And Eugene Wigner was almost prophetic. That's what we're finding in astrology. Very simple method. So again, my search for planetary configurations based on vibrational astrology theory and the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematical models produces these excellent results when we make discoveries. Now, if you have a great faith in some other theoretical framework, like modern psychological, Western astrology, or some area of Vedic astrology, then use your theoretical framework. Match those charts. Find out what's missing in the ones that don't fit your model. And this way you can build a solid model that when you collect new data and you create a control group, you have a good chance of getting very solid statistical significance in what we call a strict hypothesis test. You'll state your hypothesis, you'll collect the data, and you'll get positive results. This is the way to make breakthroughs. Is it easy? Is it simple? No. But it's kind of fun, because as you do each step, you learn more and more. So I'm going to show you this kind of quickly. I'll be making some videos in the future that go into this particular research in detail. But I'm going to just quickly, just in terms of the research procedure, I found 4 cult leaders with AA data. I did a search for cult leaders, and it listed some people, and I found that 4 of them have AA data. I want to use just really accurate birth data. Charles Manson, Jim Jones, Joseph Leonce de Mombro, I hope I'm saying his name properly, and Marshall Applewhite are the 4. So I pull up the 43 vibe of Charles Manson, and bam, oh my God. He has Mercury and Saturn at 5 and 8 degrees of Virgo, Mars at 7 Sag, Jupiter at 5 Pisces. He has a T-square involving 4 planets, all within 3 degrees. Well, that's impressive. According to our vibrational astrology theory, that's unusual, that's powerful. Wow, he does have strong 43 vibe. Well, it's probably just random luck, because so many things are. Well, let's look at the next one. Next one is Jim Jones. So here's Jim Jones, cult leader, oh my God, he has a T-square. Of Saturn and Pluto at 7 and 8 degrees of Aries, Jupiter at 8 degrees of Capricorn, Neptune at 8 degrees of Cancer. This is within 2 degrees with, let's see, and 5 planets within a 3-degree orb. If we add Mars in, we have not 4 but 5 planets. What? So we make a guess, the model is fitting. Let's try the third one. We go to the third one, which is this guy DeMambro. He doesn't have it. He does not have it. Now this is where he does not have the 4 planet pattern. It just is not there within the kind of thing that's reasonable to expect. So we have to modify our formula. This is what Kepler did. This is what you have to try and try and try again. I mean, Kepler went through so many variations, and then he ended up with this elaborate 3 rules that incredibly accurate. So, it could take years, it could take however long it takes, but we have an exception to the rule. My first thought is, maybe I'll go to 43 times 43, because our previous research shows that carries the 43 quality very strong. It's 1849. These extremely high vibrations over the last 3, 4, 5 years in our research, we're finding that they're extremely important. I've made several videos about this. So let's try. Again, we modify our rules to see if we can find the formula, because we're searching, we're seeking, we're looking. We're not testing. Some people say, oh, well, you're just changing your formula to fit the data. Exactly. I'm trying. That's what Kepler did. He didn't say, oh, I know the how planets move. He said, let me just explore. So you explore. You try to fit a mathematical model to what you're observing. And oh my God, it took my breath away. DeMambro, when you go to the 47 times 47 5, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets within 9 degrees. We allow 16-degree orb for these things. So now we can modify our formula, and this requires a lot of intuition and sensitivity to how you think things work. I'll go ahead and I'll say cult leaders have 4 or more planets in hard aspect in 43 or 43 times 43 vibration. Actually, it gets a little more refined than that. Now let's go to the fourth person. Fourth person is Marshall Applewhite. He does not have the 43 vibe. He's got 2 planets square 2 others, but the orbs are too big, so he does not have it. Let's look at his 43 times 43 vibe. He still doesn't have it. He has only 3 planets here. He doesn't have it. Marshall Applewhite, 1 out of the 4, doesn't fit. Now, I've just spent, 20 or 30 hours following a trail that I think might explain why Marshall Applewhite, what's going on with him. He's the exception to the rule. This is the procedure. I could end up spending maybe 10 hours a week for the next several months trying to understand one little detail. Why was Marshall Applewhite a cult leader? Now, maybe you're smarter than me and you can just figure it out right away, and you'll say, well, the rule of the ascendant, Okay, we'll put that rule in there. But just remember, if that's your rule, when we look at the next person, the 5th case, the 6th case of a cult leader, will they fit your model? The question is not whether your model works with the data you're exploring now. You're using that to make the discovery to see if it will fit new data. And the more rules you have and the less coherent they are and whatever, the less likely it is to work. That's a basic principle of machine learning and data mining. So we have one exception. Now, should we say, well, 3 out of 4 is good enough? Well, in a lot of research I do, 3 out of 4 is not good enough. Want to understand those cases that do not work, because if we can understand those, our model will be better, and then when we get new data, we have a greater chance of having statistical significance, high effect sizes. This is what we've done in previous research with spectacular results. So that's it, my friend. Marshall Applewhite's chart has put me on a long investigation to figure out why he does not fit the formula. This is the procedure of this kind of mathematical modeling. And so I have here in bold on the middle of the slide, the direct mathematical modeling research method is used to build a model. And then after we build the model, we do a statistical test. So the mathematical modeling does not completely replace the kind of statistical research that's often done in astrology. It's just a long, long process to build a solid model. Then we can get new data, and then we can do a strict hypothesis test, which is the gold standard. It's the pinnacle. It's the highest form of research. In other words, it gives us the highest confidence. And then we really see if we found something. So that is the procedure that we use. And I want to make a few more points very quickly. There are other ways to build mathematical models. You can build them, one way is through the direct mathematical modeling, which I've described. You apply a formula to the observations, you see what works, you keep repeating, that's what I'm describing. You can also do statistical research. They often also lead to mathematical models. So there are many ways. It's like many pathways to the top of the mountain. But I wanted to discuss this one because it's hardly ever mentioned. It's just widely overlooked. It's very powerful. And even if you read a book on research methods, modern research methods generally implies qualitative and quantitative methods and not the way mathematical models were created in especially early stages of the sciences. So in astrology, we're in a situation that's not very different from the situation that Kepler and Newton were in, where we're at an early stage of formulating something clear, concise, sharp, and accurate. And so the same kinds of methods are working fabulously and brilliantly in the research that I do and some of my colleagues do. So two paths that can lead to mathematical models, such as law of gravity, 3 laws of planetary motion, or a regression formula that's used in the social sciences, and that often comes out of statistical research. They're all mathematical models. And what I'm emphasizing here is a research procedure for finding a mathematical model that's often overlooked and underutilized in the field that I work in, which is astrology. And here's copied this out from a website. There's the website name of all the different kinds of mathematical models in epidemiology, environmental science, finance, transportation, sports, healthcare, astrophysics, social sciences. Mathematical models are ubiquitous, and I'm just talking about, in this video, a procedure for discovering the mathematical model that is not common in a lot of areas today, but works brilliantly and fantastically in the astrological research. For example, if I get a good idea of why Marshall Applewhite is a cult leader, I'm tracking down some ideas right now, and it's leading to all kinds of interesting ideas, I'll have a better model with greater hope of succeeding when I test it with new data. So that's the importance of this persistence to get every chart you're looking at to fit. It's not the only way to go. It's one way to go that I've used very successfully. Now, I think this might be my last point, one or two last points. You have the usual research where people talk about quantitative and qualitative research and exploratory and confirmatory. This direct mathematical modeling, can we put it in the language, is it quantitative? Is it qualitative? Is it exploratory? Is it confirmatory? Well, you think about it, it pretty obviously is quantitative. It's giving numerical results. And it's exploratory at first. It's a way to build a model, not to test a model. It's exploratory. It's about building a model. Astrology research, we often spend too much time talking about testing models. It can really help to build a model first through data visualization and other tools, or using this direct mathematical modeling procedure. And then it becomes increasingly confirmatory if you're successful in finding a model that fits the data and you collect new data, it continues to work. So it starts out more purely exploratory, and if you're lucky and fortunate, it starts becoming confirmatory. It might just spin your wheels and get nowhere. Kepler did not necessarily have to make any progress finding the laws of planetary motion. Maybe lots of other people tried, gave up, and we never heard about it. So conclusion, this is my last slide. What I'm calling direct mathematical modeling, that's a phrase I made for this kind of mathematical modeling of making observations fit the formula to every case you have, perseverate on the ones that don't work until you can improve it. Like in the case of DeMambro, I quickly came up with a solution for why his didn't work. For Marshall Applewhite, it's putting me on a long journey, and at some point, hopefully I succeed in that, building a better model, and then I'll make a more detailed tutorial video about what that research turns up. And then eventually, we could hopefully collect new data, do a hypothesis test, and reach very high confidence about it. It's a long process to develop high confidence in something. So, conclusion, direct mathematical modeling is an effective way to build a model that has a good chance of being confirmed with future research. You build the model first rather than immediately jumping into testing a model. It's very, very effective. A final, I put it in the small font, a little technical detail is that in a lot of research that you see in astrology, they're actually doing exploratory research. They're looking at a lot of different things. And then they say, oh, I found something, and they'll use standard p-values less than 0.01 or 0.05. That's not right. If you don't have a strict hypothesis test and you're exploring different ideas, you cannot use the p less than 0.1 or 0.05. You're building a model. You're not doing a final clear hypothesis test. I just want to mention that because in a lot of astrology research, they're mixing up the exploratory and confirmatory language, and sometimes drawing conclusions that are exaggerated. They're not as good as stated. Okay, that's it. I hope that helps you appreciate some of what's going on and what can be done and what you can do to make breakthrough discoveries in astrology. Thank you very much, my friends. God bless. Namaste.